Well, hello out there to all of my listeners, and I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And I know that there's some new listeners on that's listening. You're either in the car or you're just either listening, doing some work. I'm not quite sure, but I want to share with you what this podcast is all about. It's actually for individuals who are stuck. And what I mean is there's something in your heart that you know you should be doing, but you're not doing it and you're not quite sure why. For example, there's some that want to write a book. There are others that want to start a business, somebody that wants to forgive somebody they know in a relationship that they know is not good for them, just a whole gamut of things. So we just talk about subjects or topics related to personal development, business development, and even to enable you to do some self-reflection. And today our topic is about the value of reaching for your potential. And who better yet to talk about that is my special guest. And her name is Dagna Bieda. Hi there, Dagna. How are you?
Hi, Cassandra. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be here today.
I am too. I'm very excited. Before we really get started, I'm just going to read a little bit about your background, and I'm sure you're going to fill us in on some things because my listeners like to hear a little bit about you before we get started into the questions, so they have a somewhat what I call a point of reference. Dagna is an engineer turned career coach for engineers with over, and also I'm hearing that it's not just engineers now that she's coaching. She's coaching a lot of different individuals with different professions, but she's been doing it over 10 years of the coding experience and 4+ years of coaching. She provides what we call tough love and practical guidance, drawing from her own experience. Dagna's clients come from diverse backgrounds, including small companies, FANG companies. Now, I definitely want to talk about FANG, FAANG, and some of you may have heard of that. This is my first time hearing about it. And when we say it's a tech company, it's like Facebook. It stands for, it's an acronym actually, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And I'm missing another A. What is that other A, Dagna?
Amazon. It's Amazon.
Oh my gosh, how could I forget Amazon? So isn't that amazing that that she's actually worked for FANG companies and various educational paths such as self-taught, boot camps, college graduates, and those with military or immigrant backgrounds. She helps them unlock their potential and pursue exciting career opportunities by reprogramming their mindset for success. She's not just a coach for software engineers. So let's listen to her and hear from Dagna and learn how to transform your career, because I know we have some listeners that are ready to move forward in their career. So wow, what a background. And I just can't wait for you to hear all this phenomenal things that Dagna's going to talk about that I know is going to support, empower you to move forward. Now, Dagna, what was your life like before you became an engineer?
Well, it's been a while. So
Okay.
I would say that one thing that drove me into engineering was really this idea of creating the future. And I was always very creative. As a kid, I loved to sew dresses for my Barbie dolls. And there was always this element of like creating something from different puzzles, from elements, like just grabbing different things and putting them together, making something new out of that, which is very engineering-like. Yeah. And I was pretty good at math. I really liked this kind of solving intellectual puzzles, and it was fun. So I thought, what's the better place? What could be more suited for my skills and my interests than becoming an engineer? So I ended up finding a degree that felt like the most futuristic thing that I could find, because literally I wanted to build the future. whatever that means in the mind of a teenager, right?
Right.
And I picked control engineering and robotics as a field of study, and that's actually my my background in terms of my degree. Now,
Wow.
you would think that robotics is like super cool and amazing, and
Yeah.
it was for a while, but the
Mhm.
reality is that building robots takes a long time. And I was
Mm.
actually out of college, starting my career, and I wanted to move fast.
Okay.
So, with robots, that's not really a possibility. It takes a while to build
Yeah.
them.
Oh
So I
my God.
didn't stay in the robotics realm for too long. I ended up switching to software engineering
Mhm.
because I thought if I am creating an app, for example, right, working at a company, and that app could be in the hands of millions of people, then I'm going to have an impact. Like,
Yes.
impact is something that I've always been looking for, like
Uh-huh.
looking back, seeing it in hindsight. And working for software engineering companies, various types, from startups to bigger companies,
Mhm.
to things in the middle, working for consulting agencies as well,
Uh-huh.
I realized that it was fun for a brief moment, but
Brief.
it wasn't really, a couple years, right?
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't really it anymore. And I ended up burning myself out. So
Wow. Oh, wow. That's fascinating because, we know about the STEM program, and they say very few women are in the engineering field or the math field or the tech field. So that's amazing that that's something you were creative, and that's something that you got right out of school and you got a job in that particular industry and those particular industries. So kudos to you. Now, but you indicated that well, let me ask you, you said you got burned out, but what lessons did you learn from that career before we move on to your next career?
I would say that everything's a puzzle to solve.
Hmm.
And if you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes all you need is like this small little piece that's missing, or a change in perspective because maybe you're thinking about the problem wrong. So I think the major benefit of having a robotics background, which is pretty eclectic, because on one hand, you need to know how to program a microprocessor, but on the other hand, you need to understand how humans and robots interact with each other. Like, what's the social element of interaction? You have to understand AI. Like, there's so many different eclectic things that come into robotics, or like even
Hmm.
knowing biology, right? Whenever we're talking about bionic arms or exoskeletons, which are super cool to like read about and talk about. But
Hmm.
what I really enjoyed about my career is that it was this vast amount of knowledge from different domains. And then I could kind of like pick and choose what worked together and how it would apply to my career. And there's this book called Range, which
Hmm.
is phenomenal, that talks about how generalists thrive in a specialized world.
Hmm.
I believe the author's name is David Epstein, and it's a phenomenal book because it talks about how when you have experience coming from different backgrounds,
Yes.
you are so much better at
Uh-huh.
coming up with innovative solutions,
Right.
thinking outside of the box, just because you've had experience in
Hmm.
various domains, right?
Hmm.
So, to anyone listening, if you're considering a career change, it's a phenomenal thing to do. Let me tell
Uh-huh.
you.
Right, right. So, okay, so you transitioned. Now, how long were you doing that?
The transition, or the what was
No,
I doing?
the career and the engineering. Like, how long were you in that
So
profession?
I was a robotics engineer for over 2 years. I want to say
Okay.
3. And then I was a
Uh-huh.
software engineer for 7-ish years.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
about, if my memory doesn't,
Sure. Yeah.
play some tricks on me right now.
Mhm.
And I've been coaching for the past 5 years. In January, it's going to be 6.
Okay. I asked that question because there are a lot of listeners that have been in their role for maybe 5, 6, 7, like you've been at 10 years, and there's some of them that are burnout and they're tired and they want to do something different. And you mentioned burnout as well. So I just wanted to know your transition from that to a coach. Explain to people what that transition was like. Just getting unstuck, maybe, and maybe you were stuck before you figured out, I think I'm ready to leave.
So, Cassandra, before I answer your question, I have to add that personal bit that you started, the podcast with, because I'm the kind of person that I always chased my curiosity and I trusted my gut, right?
Okay.
So, what happened at the point of me burning out, to just kind of paint a picture, set the scene, how I decided to move into coaching? Basically, my husband and I, we met traveling backpacking in Europe. At that time, I was still working in Europe, and I thought that meeting up this guy was a fun adventure, and I'll never see him again. But we had so much in common. He's a fellow engineer too. We
Uh-huh.
valued the same things, and we
Mhm.
just vibed. And like, since we've met, we have talked every single day.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was able to convince me to get into a long distance relationship because he had to go back from his trip across Europe after graduating from college. He
Mhm.
came back to United States, and we were like in this long distance relationship, and he convinced me to move to the States. Well, his student debt convinced me, let's be straight. It was so much easier for me to move, for us to give ourselves a chance at a real relationship,
Mhm.
for him to pay off his debt here in the States than as if he had moved to Europe, just because
Mm.
of the salary differences.
Yes, right.
The market in United States is basically configured to help people pay off that debt. In Europe,
Mm.
because the education's free, that kind of money is not in the market.
Uh-huh.
And so I ended up moving here. And after I moved, I never really looked back and
Mm.
stopped to think what it meant. And even though someone, you know, even though nobody died, it felt as if I was grieving the past life that I've
Yeah.
left behind, and I had trouble letting that go. So
Mhm.
even though I moved to be with the love of my life that I
Yeah.
can tell, that I can see now, it was really difficult transition. And
Mhm.
then we got married, we traveled for our honeymoon, came back, had a baby. I had, in all this, I had already been a software engineer working in my career. And it was like this kind of pancake of issues that
Mm.
collapsed together in
Mhm.
September of 2019, where it
Okay.
wasn't just the burnout, it was also that complicated grief of moving abroad, of being an immigrant, of leaving my entire life behind,
Yeah. Mhm.
and the postpartum depression from having a baby,
Yeah.
and kind
Wow.
of being oblivious to what it means to have a baby. Because I gotta say, I was probably for an entire year in denial that my
Uh-huh.
life has changed as a mother.
Okay.
So all these things kind of collapsed, and I came into work. At that point, I'm a senior software engineer.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to work towards a promotion and have a one-on-one with my manager at work, and I burst out crying,
Oh my
like
goodness.
sobbing, just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And you say, oh my goodness, I'm sitting there like, who's this person crying? That's not me. I
Mhm.
value being professional, being able to keep your cool at work. And like, I would
Yeah.
never imagine that I'm the kind of person that would cry in front of my manager. But it was like a wake up call. Like, Dagna, stop pretending. You need help. And so I reached out to a third party
Mhm.
professional, to a
Mhm.
therapist. And I could see within literally months of us just talking, my perspective changed. She helped me understand how my past created this situation and me avoiding to deal with
Yeah.
certain issues, have led to this situation that
Wow.
I was in, being burned out with postpartum depression, suffering from complicated grief, and unable to let go and move past that.
Wow. That's a lot.
I know. But
Yeah.
like in a short time frame, she helped me
Hmm.
kind of get out of this, out of that funk. And I had this aha moment like,
Hmm.
this
Mm.
is kind of impact that I could have on other people's lives.
Wow. So is that what led you to start coaching because of that transition and that trauma drama that occurred in your life?
That situation made me commit to being a coach because, truth be
Wow.
told, I was already testing the waters. I was
Hmm.
trying to build a business on the side
Hmm.
because I was already coaching people per se in my job as a senior software engineer.
Yeah.
Because as a senior, whenever there's new people being hired, you have to onboard them, you have to guide them, you kind of help mold them into
Yeah.
future senior engineers. And so I was doing a lot of that at work already, and I really liked it. And I started seeing how people build businesses out of that.
Oh,
And
oh.
I thought, that sounds cool. That sounds like something I would like to pursue. But having gone through therapy and experiencing a massive change just from talking to someone who got me
Hmm.
was what really got me committed to this
Mm.
idea. Like, yes, this is what I need to do. This is like where my talents are. And I love talking to people. And it is so gratifying being able to help someone on their journey of life.
Right. So it's kind of like I would say your world kind of rocked. And like, okay, if it were not for that, then you probably would not be doing what you're doing today. And I mention that because we all go through something. It may not be what you've gone through, but it's something. And either that situation can either enable somebody to be bitter about what has occurred, or either better, and what you realize that this was something you couldn't do by yourself. You needed to get some help. And that's okay that we all need help. We all need somebody just,
Absolutely.
yeah, just to talk through it. So that wow, that was interesting. Now, why do the title is the value of reaching your own potential. Do you think what you're doing now is you've reached your potential? I know you have more to do, but was that what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely not. There's still so many things that I need to learn in order to grow, in order to continue growing.
Mhm.
And, as we talked before the show, both you and I, we have our books. Mine came out October 1st. It's called Brain Refactor. And there's about a rough estimate 30 million engineers in tech at this point in time. And I plan to reach all of them with my book because I feel like it
Okay,
can have a massive impact
right.
on their lives and it can help them improve. So I'm still chasing the impact and I am
Mhm.
nowhere near to being done. Is it? Mhm.
Yeah, like the book is the brain refactor,
Exactly.
optimizing your internal code to thrive in tech and engineering and get more success, fulfillment, money, opportunities, impact, and growth. Now that is powerful, and your focus right here is just for tech and engineers. And so that's not going to go for just one gender, the female gender, because it's more. Now, you tell me, it's more men in the tech and engineering industry. Is that true?
That's the unfortunate state of tech at this point in time. You are
Mhm,
correct, Cassandra.
mhm,
However,
mhm.
it's a very young discipline. It's only about 80 years old at this point in time. And if you had the opportunity to watch Hidden Figures, for example, you'd
Yes.
know that the first computers were actually females, right?
Yeah.
Doing all the calculations, doing all the math. And at the very beginning, for a long time, the computer engineering, computer science, when it started out as a field, when IBM came out with the computers,
Mhm.
it was 50-50, females and males coming from different backgrounds, with the caveat
Mhm.
that, again, females were the first computers doing all the calculations.
Yeah.
And what happened is, I believe, I watched this documentary and I can't remember exactly the date, but basically when the Game Boy was invented, it was the time when the marketers had started taking advantage of that progress of creating games, but the
Yeah.
market was very polarized between pink and blue. And so
Mhm.
they had to figure out which aisle they're going to be selling their tech products
Yeah.
that are related to gaming, which was completely new at that point in time.
Mhm.
And they came up with Game Boy. Why is it a Game Boy, not a Game Girl? Like, did
Right.
you ever stop for a second to think about that? And
Exactly.
I feel like it wasn't really intentional. It was more of
Mhm.
a unfortunate ripple effect, but the marketing around it was so powerful that as a society, we've been programmed to believe that it's not for girls, right?
Yes.
And
Great
now a
point.
lot of STEM initiatives are trying to correct that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a phenomenal effort, but they're still lacking a lot, right? And
Yes.
I've been many times the only female engineer on my team or in my
Mhm.
company,
Yeah.
or the very first one growing
Mhm.
the female team, which
Mm.
was very rewarding experience. And I'm really happy seeing that there's more and more, um, in general, diverse people coming into tech,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that is really helping with the industry to kind of rebalance the fact that it's mostly dominated by white males is the boot camps. I love working with boot camp grads. And one thing, Cassandra, that I noticed is that I did mention I'm a university trained engineer, but a
Mhm.
lot of the time when I work with bootcamp graduates, because they have this range of qualifications,
Yes.
they don't have the things that are holding back the quote unquote traditionally trained engineers that went through a 4-year college degree. So, for example,
Mhm.
in the engineering, we're trained to overvalue tech skills, the hard skills, and ignore people, soft skills. Basically ignore or just
Mhm.
like overlook them completely. What bootcamp grads
Mhm.
bring to the table is that they have a balance, right? They are able to grasp technology and are smart enough and dangerous enough to know what is it that's happening, to utilize technology to solve a business problem. And they have the people skills to then
Yes.
self-market themselves, talk to other people,
Mhm.
connect with other
Mhm.
departments. And I often see that
Mhm.
bootcamp grads progress in their career much faster than
Mhm.
the traditionally
That's
trained
good.
engineers.
Right. You're coming in and out a little bit. That's the internet that's going on that you initially had some problems with.
Oh no.
Just so my listeners will know that. But you know what you stated, you're exactly right. And I think it's all about a mindset. Because men dominate that industry, then it's a mindset. As a woman, as a female, I can't do that. But yet, once they get out of school and get into that boot camp, then they're triggered. Like, yeah, I'm liking this. It's not as bad as I think. Because years ago, the thing was nobody women don't do this, but you're right. In hidden figures, women did do that. So I'm hopeful now, as time goes by and society shifts a little bit, that would change. And I know your book is going to be just unbelievable. I know it's going to impact individuals to really start being interested in getting into the STEM program. I think that's great. Great.
I
um
sure hope so.
yeah, I believe so. I believe so because you are passionate about it, and that's when that happens. That could be your full potential at that time, but as we move on and progress and get older and get more mature or whatever, something else will change. You had mentioned that the individuals that you coach, you had said a lot of them are in their way, and it's time for them to get out of their own way. Could you share what are some of the characteristics or traits or habits that whereas they're in their way because of those?
I love that you highlight that, Cassandra, because in my book, I go into exactly four
Mhm,
specific ways that cause imposter syndrome,
mhm.
burnout, trouble dealing with other people, or self marketing struggles.
Ooh,
And I compare how the human brain works kind of like a software. And so if something's not working and you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you just have to log into your brain and
mhm,
reprogram what's not working. And it
mhm.
could be as simple as that, right? And you're absolutely right. A lot of the time when I coach people and in my own personal growth journey, I realized sometimes you think you are facing an obstacle,
Yeah.
but then it turns out that you're the problem.
Yes.
Because either there's a mindset gap or a skill gap that needs to be fixed, or a perspective shift to
Yes.
overcome that perceived obstacle. So you
Mhm,
are totally in
mhm,
your own way at all times.
mhm, mhm. So of course it sounds like the mindset is a common thing. You know. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
The
mean, because let's put it that way,
yeah,
brain is at the center of everything that we do.
right.
So if
So
we can improve brain and our thinking, everything else improves too.
exactly. So how can one improve that? Like, what are some of the methodologies that you use to support individuals to get out of their way? And because I think, when they're in their way, people are non-productive. It's like, okay. And then to me, they never, what I would say, live their best life on their terms because of the mind, because of the things in their way. So, what are some of the methodologies that you use to support or empower individuals to get out of their way?
100%. 100%. Like if something in your life isn't happening the way you would love it to happen,
Mhm.
it's because you're in your way and it's your mind that's stopping you from
Mhm.
getting what it is that you're trying to get. And before we hopped on this call, we were briefly talking about how there are different modalities, right? So I mentioned that therapy
Yeah.
is a phenomenal place to start
Yeah.
because it helps you understand how your thinking became what it is, right?
Mhm.
I like
Mhm.
to say that in your between your ears, there's this legacy mental code. And what that
Yes.
means is basically that your lived experience
Mhm.
programmed you to act the way you act, to think the way you do, to react the way you do. And a lot of it is automatic, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And we are not even aware. So, for example, if I'm tired, I snap at my kids. That's just kind of
Mhm.
the automatic response. And
Mhm.
unless I can become more aware of
Mhm.
that fact, there's nothing that could ever stop me from acting that particular way. So awareness is key. Becoming mindful
Mhm.
of how you how your programming came to be, why you think the way you do, and your
Mhm.
life programmed you to act that particular way. Therapy is a phenomenal tool to figure that out. Coaching is kind of like taking it to the next step,
Okay.
where you are trying to figure out, okay, this isn't optimal, how can I make it better, right?
Mhm.
And the specific difference between therapy and coaching is that therapy is trying to kind of get you from like a diseased state to like normal, but
Yes.
coaching takes you from normal to your peak performance. So there's like
Mm.
a different interest there, but there's a lot of overlap. So coaching and therapy is number one. It brings that self-awareness, that mindfulness, and there's a lot of tools that therapists and coaches often share that help you on a daily basis to either reflect or notice and become aware. Now, the
Yeah.
third thing that I highly
Mhm.
recommend is this neurofeedback training. Excuse me.
Mhm.
And to explain it better, I like to compare to a phone, right?
Okay.
How often do you update the software of your phone, Cassandra?
Um, I don't, but somebody else does. So
The
it's time for an upgrade, and you just push that button, and it goes on its own.
Exactly. Your software updates probably like once a month or so, right? You
Mhm.
have this new features that come to your phone, and you don't have to really do much about it. It just updates itself. And
Exactly.
it's similar with your brain. The software is like the thinking patterns, your beliefs. So let's say you learn something new and that could change a little bit how you're thinking. That's a software update, right?
Hmm.
But then
Yes.
every now and then, I bet you would go to the store and be like, here's my old phone. Thank you. I'll take a new one,
Yes. Exactly.
right? Because you want the newest hardware too.
Yes.
And how does that relate to the brain? Well, the hardware here is like the actual biological structure of your brain, how it's wired, how it's connected, how like the frequencies that it works at. And
Mm.
neurofeedback training, also called QEEG biofeedback, helps, first of all, measure how your
Mhm.
hardware is currently performing and then
Mm.
optimize the things that are not working. So I took myself in order to help me combat the postpartum depression. And
Yeah.
it was phenomenal because I had the postpartum depression twice with my first two kids. But with the third one, after I did the biofeedback, I never had the postpartum depression. And now I'm an expectant mom of a fourth kid. So
Oh
you could see
wow.
how it helped me, because how on earth would I commit to having another
I
one
was gonna
if,
say you just gonna have
you know,
babies to see, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And like it changed how I show up in relationships because it helped my brain update itself and process information in a different, better, more optimized way.
So this is
So
called neurofeedback. Is it right? Neurofeedback. And in the beginning, with the awareness, that's is that the subconscious in the beginning, like you auto, it's like auto, you because of your experiences, what you've been through, you just automatically, it's kind of like when you're a little girl or a little boy and somebody says, you're not smart enough, you
not
know.
quite. No,
Take,
the not smart enough, that's beliefs. That's the software part.
okay, okay, that's the
Coaching
software.
and therapy is what changes what you
Okay,
believe to be true about yourself or the world around you.
okay, all right.
What neurofeedback does is that, let's say, well, I could call in my example that my
Okay,
husband loves when I talk
okay,
about it.
go for
There were
it.
situations when he would just talk to me
Hmm.
and I would get agitated and irritated and annoyed and felt like he was attacking me, even though he wasn't.
Uh-huh.
But it's how my brain was processing the information,
Okay.
triggering a state of fight, right?
Hmm.
Just like we have the fight or flight
Right.
or
Hmm.
freeze response. My system was wired in a way that wasn't optimal. So sometimes I would start a fight for no reason
Hmm.
because of how my hardware of my brain was wired. And
Okay.
after the training, he was the one who noticed, like, wow, like
You've
you're
changed.
being nicer to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And it's not that I was a mean person and I didn't really change my feelings to him or perspective about him. It's just that my brain started processing sounds differently.
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Okay.
We have probably saved, marriage because of just saying that.
I know, I know, and actually, that can be used to for individuals to get out of their way too, right?
Absolutely. So imagine a life where there's no anxiety, where there's no depression, where there's
Right.
no overthinking, because there are specific parts of your brain that are responsible for
Hmm.
anxiety, for
Hmm.
depression, and for
Hmm.
overthinking. And if
Yeah.
you can adjust those parts of your brain, everything else will improve too. So I feel that after having done the neurofeedback training, I have changed how I show up in relationships and became much more unstoppable, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I noticed is, Cassandra, after having kids, that
Yeah.
my brain changed in the sense that I don't know if it's part of the exhaustion, and I haven't really seen a study that would analyze mothers' brains before and after pregnancy, but I would love to see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, after having kids, my brain was dead at night. I could only come back home and binge a Netflix show, and
Right.
that's it. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't able to be productive and
Mhm.
creative and just use my brain at night because I
Mhm.
was so exhausted. Like there was
Yeah.
no energy or resources for my brain to use.
Wow.
After the neurofeedback training and being able to figure out which areas of my brain were underperforming or overperforming, contributing to this loss of basically mental energy, I am now able to have this fantastic conversation with you in an
Mhm.
afternoon, which was not a possibility
Yeah. Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
few years back before I did the neurofeedback training. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that because the changes are very subtle and it doesn't change who you are.
Mhm.
It changes how your brain operates
Mhm.
and how you perceive the world, which makes everything easier. And it feels so surreal because you
Mhm.
live your entire life thinking a certain way.
Yes.
And then understanding that your brain can work much more optimally is like, whoa, so surreal.
How long is this training? How long is it?
So it depends on the individual, but it
Okay.
takes about 40, 60, 80 sessions. You have to
Oh.
go into a biofeedback clinic in person
Oh.
because the way
Okay.
it works is they put like this little hat that measures
Yeah.
frequencies of your brain,
Mhm.
and basically you watch TV
Uh-huh.
in your sessions. It's super easy. After your brain map is done and it's been identified what are the pain points and pain areas, problematic areas that you want to improve, then you go into a session and all you do, Cassandra, is watch TV.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
there's a special software. So the
Mhm.
TV is connected to sensors on your head.
Yeah.
There's about two sensors, depending on what it is, the area that you're working on.
Mhm.
And based on real-time information from the sensors measuring the frequency of that particular brain area,
Uh-huh.
the screen that you're watching would like change its size, or
Uh-huh.
it would lower the brightness, or it would lower the volume of what it is that you're watching, creating a
Mhm.
micro penalty.
Mm.
And your brain likes to be efficient. Any human brain likes to be efficient, so it doesn't like those penalties. So it will try to act in a way to keep the image steady without
Yeah.
changing the brightness and without
Yeah.
changing the audio. So
Wow.
it's kind of like a penalty reward system
Yeah.
that teaches the brain on, you could say, molecular level how to optimize yourself. But you as a client or patient, you just sit there and watch TV. There's no talking about past traumas. There's no need to share
Wow.
and be vulnerable with anyone because all you
Okay.
do is sit and watch TV.
That's the
And you
first
could,
I've heard about it, and I'm certain insurance doesn't pay for that.
not yet. However, I've seen that there are some movements who are trying to convince the insurance to start paying for that because the patient cost is so much less than, for example, covering a cost of someone who's been suicidal and admitted in a hospital. It's so much
Yeah.
less. If they
Yeah.
had gone through a neurofeedback training that could have helped their brain act more efficiently and prevent those kinds of thoughts, right? And it
Wow.
helps for a majority of things that are related to brain not being optimal or efficient, like ADHD, depression, uh, anxiety, sleep
Mhm.
issues, memory issues. So like there's so many ways that you could help your brain be more efficient by using that. I'm just so excited. We could talk about this for hours.
I know now, okay, so Dagna, that I think that's great. But the majority of the people, number one, at the moment, won't be able to afford it. Number two, they may think it's woo, like, oh, it's kind of weird. And so, what without that, and in your coaching, do you recommend that to some of your clients? And the ones that you don't recommend it, is what other ways can somebody break free from that anxiety and that burnout and frustration in your coaching?
So whenever I work with my clients in my coaching, we focus on the software updates, right? With the hardware, the only thing that I can recommend is really improving your diet, improving your sleep habits, and including exercise in your daily regimen, right? And it's like very, I would say, basic kinds of improvement that you could do.
Yeah.
But in terms of diet, and Dr. Amen, who has a type of a clinic that does brain scans, a different kind, but he does talk about it. I would highly recommend looking him up. But the way I work with my clients in terms of understanding the burnout, the anxiety, the depression, it's really about understanding how their legacy code in their mind came to be. So what we do is we follow this 5-step process that is in my book, which is basically, I call it the brain refactor algorithm. And the step 1 is identifying root causes, right? There's a reason you're burned out, you're depressed, anxious, and most likely the reasons that have led you to this point in time at the time that they were created in your programming were beneficial, were for your survival, were helpful, and made perfect sense.
Right.
However, as you lived your life, probably some of those patches in the code turned into bugs or inefficiencies. And now you have to go back and reanalyze them. So for example, let's say you were the 4th of 6 siblings, and your older siblings were always loud and it drove you crazy. So as a kid, you were hiding. You like to hide and just stay away from all that noise because it annoyed you.
Right.
But now you're a professional and you keep on hiding when someone covers, a lot of the room, and you tend to like shy away from being at the center of attention. And that kind of behavior, even though it's rooted in your past and it made sense when it was put into your code base, it doesn't make sense anymore. It's not serving you anymore because you want to be seen as the valuable professional you are, and you want to get that promotion, right? So I help my clients see how that programming from the past is impacting their now and how it will impact their future if they don't really do anything about it, right?
Right. So why do you think there's value in individuals reaching their potential?
Because that's why we're on this earth. That's what we're here to do. In a simple way. In a simple way.
Yeah.
All of us, the way that I see things is that our bodies are like vessels and our souls are here kind of renting it out for an X amount of time. We don't know how many years we've got.
Exactly.
But the bodies are not our core essence or true self, or you could call it a soul, right? They're kind of separate and they're like on a mission, and part of the mission is to discover the mission and then really implement it. So whenever you're trying to reach for your potential, you're basically coming to do what you're meant to do. I'm not even sure how to put it into words, but Cassandra, I'm not really sure how to respond to that.
Let me see if I could shed some light on it. And this is my perspective. Okay.
What's your take on it? Yeah.
Yeah. And my take on it is, I believe that we're all here for something. We're not here just to be here. Okay. I think we all are ordained. And when I say ordained, I'm talking about that's a gift that you've been given. And I think, and I know that as you start working to get that gift to manifest, your whole outlook and things, you feel better because you're doing what you were created to do. So I agree that, and a lot of people don't get to their potential because they're stuck. For some, because of mental illness. It's just an array of issues that don't enable them to get there. But yet, as you're coaching and what I do is kind of talk to individuals. Number one, a lot of them don't even know what their potential is. If I say you want to live your best life, what does that look like? And that's an when you talk about awareness, I call it the ABCs, the mind. You want to be aware and acknowledge what's going on. Where did the origin of that belief come from? And then the C is, can we change the narrative on it? So I really believe that we're here for something, and 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 we don't know how long we're going to be here. But I tell you, when you're doing what you ordained to do with your gifts, life is so much better. I'm not saying you won't have problems.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely agree. And there's some research that supports that too, that when you're aware of what it is that you value, what it is that you care about,
Yes.
and you can align what you do with what you value, right?
Yeah.
Then you can tap into flow states. You tap into unending motivation to keep going because it
Yes.
puts you on
Yes.
fire, right?
It
And
does.
it's phenomenal. And I totally agree. I love your way of putting it, that it's a gift.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And just to kind of tap into it, because so many people are like, well, why am I here? And then there are a lot of people that they're just here. And that's why a lot of them are very unhappy because they're just here, like,
That's true. That's
yeah,
very
yeah.
true.
And you talked about understanding your values are important. Branding and clearing limiting beliefs can stop you. I mean, that's what you said, and I totally concur to that. And it's all about those limiting beliefs. You know, yeah, like you said, we could talk about this all day long.
Exactly, right?
We could talk about this all day long. Let me ask you, um, the top mistakes your clients make.
They try to figure it out themselves for way too long.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, time's such a precious resource.
Hmm.
And the way I see it too is like you are your best investment,
Yeah.
right? You can
Hmm.
always make more money, but you will never get back the time. So I am a huge fan of investing in myself by either getting coaching or learning new things or buying books. And I don't even think about it. Like if I see a book, I'm going to get it on Amazon and have it shipped to me the next day
Yeah.
because there's incredible value in learning from other people's
Yeah.
mistakes or following
Yeah.
a proven framework that has worked with people for
Yeah.
people. And of course, you could try and DIY it, right? Do it all yourself, figure it out yourself, but you're wasting precious life,
Yes. Exactly.
the time that you'll never get back. So that would be really the top mistake.
Hmm.
At the point that my clients come to me, they are obviously open to investing in themselves. And the second biggest mistake is being closed for feedback. You have to be open for feedback in order to grow. A lot of
Hmm.
us, well, all of us, have a lot of blind spots and we're
Yes.
not even aware. So, for example, my big issue when I moved to the United States, being an Eastern European, is that
Hmm.
I was coming across very arrogant,
Mm.
harsh, very
Yes.
mean. Some people would tell me that I was rude. And I
Hmm.
was like, you're just too sensitive.
Yeah.
Okay, get yourself together.
Well.
And I did not allow for that feedback. Hey, your communication skills are lacking. You need to work
Yeah.
on those skills.
Right.
I was deaf,
Hmm.
Cassandra, for years. And that held me back from getting
Hmm.
that promotion that I mentioned earlier, that I cried in a meeting with my
Right.
manager, right?
Right.
Because I didn't have the skill to communicate assertively. In my mind, it was the people around me being too sensitive and
Yes.
having something against strong professional women. That's how
Exactly.
I interpreted it,
Hmm.
but it wasn't reality. And I can see it now because I've gained the skill of
Yeah.
assertive communication. And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, Dagna, like you gotta own it. You were just straight up
Right,
rude.
right, right. And I look at that as that has very much helped you in your coaching.
Yes, yes, it's been incredibly beneficial because I work with people
Exactly.
like myself all the time. And I
Yeah,
work with people who work with people like myself
exactly.
who are, for example, suffering imposter syndrome and being afraid to get in meetings because they work with arrogant seniors. And I'm
Hmm.
like, this is why this person is like that. It's
Exactly.
nothing related to you. Here's how you're going to work around it. I know
Exactly.
because I've been that person.
Yeah.
So it's been a
And
tremendous help
yeah,
having that
yeah,
experience.
yeah, because you were probably people were intimidated.
Yes.
So they would shut down. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. Dagna, like I said, I could talk to you on and on and on, but I would love to know, and my listeners would love to know, how can they connect with you?
LinkedIn is the absolute best place because that's where
Mhm,
I'm very active, connecting with people, talking about what it is that I do with my coaching. But
mhm.
a second best place is actually Amazon, getting my book, Brain Refactor, because my book talks about everything that we talked about today, plus actual case studies of my past clients and how they got past imposter syndrome, out of burnout, how they figured out how to deal with troublesome other
Wow.
people, and how
Mhm.
can they self-market themselves better. So just reading the book, I really try to write it in a way that it will feel conversational, like the
Yes.
reader and I are having a conversation at a coffee or just taking a stroll in a beautiful park, and just sharing that wisdom that I've
Mhm,
accumulated over a
mhm.
lifetime. And
Yeah.
these are the best places to connect. Other than that, I am accepting clients, so you can find more information on my website, themindfuldeaf.com,
Mindful depth. Okay.
and that's how we can connect further.
Exactly. Well, you were certainly a pleasure. And I tell my listeners, I know that they gravitated to our conversation. I can just feel it. And I also want them to share this with some of their friends. And of course, this is going to be on all podcast platforms. And if in fact they like the podcast, I encourage them to subscribe, and I encourage you to get the book, because I'm going to get that book. That book is going to help me with my clients as well. So I thank you for that, Dagna. And as you
My
indicated,
pleasure.
yeah, we can't, we're not on an island alone. We can't be alone. We need support. We need people around us, the people, that has our best interests at heart. So just know that the support that Dagna got, she's here to help you. I'm here as well. I call myself a mentor. She's a coach, and it's not that much of a difference. So just know to utilize and use your resources. And again, Dagna, thank you so much. And my listeners, God bless you, and bye for now.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.